Wonderful.
Okay, concentration, meditation, sleep. This is from Wassermann site number 141 of December 2006. Concentration is a state of consciousness in which the human being consciously gathers himself in a mental and feeling related manner and precisely directs his perception and attention toward a certain and the interest serving fulfillment or zeal. The normal state of consciousness is not concentrated, but anchors in an absent mindedness and fleetingness by which no real concentration is effective. The usual state of consciousness is far too uncontrolled, too weak, too volatile to be able to understand the nature of reality or to be able to understand the reality in its true existence. Therefore, if something is meant to be comprehended and understood, then an intentional concentration toward the predetermined factor is required, which is envisioned as a meritorious fulfillment or on which the concentration and interest is directed. In order to comprehend and understand the nature of reality, it is absolutely necessary to comprehend reality in its complete extensiveness. Therefore, if the human being wants to free him or his fellow human beings from lack of understanding, then he or she must direct him or herself to it in a concentrative way. Thus, it is necessary to train the consciousness in such a way that it becomes a useful tool with which everything can be clearly recognized, comprehended, and understood. The consciousness must be made into a weapon which is used like a sharp sword to separate all that is absent minded and fleeting. To use the consciousness for deliberate and firm concentration must be learned because this is the exercise by which everything is switched off that causes the uncontrolledness, the fleeting, and the absent mindedness. Through concentration, the consciousness has to be trained in such a way that it becomes powerful and effective, that it works in a concentrated, precise, and effortless way toward a fulfillment and remains with it until it is reached. The foundation for the necessary concentration exercise is an appropriate motivation as well as the necessary volition and perseverance. Since the beginning of time, the human being has been given free will, and with it also a consciousness that the human being can form and use according to his own will. In fact, both for the negative as well as for the positive, for the bad as well as the good. Through the influences of the environment, as well as her own illogical thoughts and feelings, etc., from time immemorial, however, the human being tends to turn toward the bad and negative rather than to the good and the positive. Bad and negative characteristics, hatred, jealousy, strife, discords, greed, and stinginess, as well as unpeace, unfreedom, and disharmony, joylessness, worries, and sorrows, etc., are results that have led to war, destruction, and ruin since primeval times, all of which are unvalues that are grouped in the term blindness, namely in the sense that they represent blindness toward the effective creational principles and the innermost human nature. Therefore, it is important to eradicate these blindnesses in order to grant the true creational and human nature its fundamentally true peace, from which being human in the real and true sense and real humanity evolves. This can only be reached through concentration, which is also a form of a valuable meditation. The importance of concentration lies in winning a comprehensive control over the entire consciousness by which any desired fulfillment can be perceived, approached, and reached. To reach this, however, it must be learned, because from nothing there comes nothing. Truthfully, the human being stands under the influence of his/her consciousness, which is formed by fleetingness and absent-mindedness, which in turn lead to an unconcentrated existence under the influence of blindnesses. This leads to the fact that the human being surrenders him or herself to bad and negative thoughts and feelings, from which, in turn, bad and negative actions arise. Therefore, the human being must endure his or her own insufficiencies and blindnesses, and must accept these unintentionally, which continues until these evils are dissolved in a concentrated and conscious way and sent into oblivion. The whole issue of the blindnesses generates suffering and pain for the human being, as well as disadvantages and joylessness, together with all other bad and negative factors, which must be seen as a self-created mean act against oneself. In order to break through this vicious cycle of mean acts, of self-created pain and suffering, the consciousness must be changed and control over it must be won. The consciousness must be freed from blindnesses and unvirtues and be directed to a path which leads to the true virtues and to true love, to internal and external peace, as well as to the internal and external freedom and to effective harmony. The human being must never allow his/her consciousness to uncontrollably do as it likes and let it be directed by blindnesses. Consequently, he or she must also never stumble into virtuous thoughts, feelings, and actions. Truthfully, he/she must turn deliberately to the true virtues and work consciously in a concentrated manner toward them. Concentration is also a form of meditation, and to do this successfully, a clear control is to be carried out, which must be approached systematically and maintained until the attainment of the fulfillment. If this is done, then a clear inner cognition builds up, which, however, must be suitably controlled, otherwise it won't be helpful. So this is a part 1 of 4